If you're going to build something from nothing, you've got to know what really works. I took a $1,000 loan and built a $5 billion business, and now I make smart investments in new businesses on Shark Tank. This is Barbara Corcoran, and you're listening to Business Unusual. Today on Business Unusual, I'll answer your questions about business, motivation, life, or anything else on your mind. But first, if you're afraid of public speaking, you're missing out on one of the biggest opportunities to grow your business. One of my jobs today is public speaking, and I do a lot of it, and I'm good at it. But that wasn't always the case. I used to hate it. Like too many people, I lost my voice the first time I spoke in front of a live audience. Although I must have spent 100 hours or more preparing, I made the mistake of opening with a joke that no one found funny. And I promptly lost my voice. After my first public failure, I knew I only had two choices. I could hide out feeling ashamed and sorry for myself, never to speak again, or I could do something to fix it. So I cried in my soup that night, and by morning I signed up to teach a 10-week evening course on how to sell real estate because that was the one thing I knew, and I figured I'd use a small classroom to get lots of practice. Would you believe the very first night I showed up, I met Carrie Chiang, a young student who told me she was selling lots of condominiums to the Chinese. So I prepared very well for every class each week and did the best I could for the remaining 9 weeks and ended the course recruiting Carrie into my tiny real estate company. Carrie quickly became the top broker in my tiny shop, and in a few years, she was the #1 broker in the industry. Not a bad prize for getting back up. A few tips for getting over fear. Number 1, it's always better to face it and force yourself to do what you're afraid of because in the end, it's easier than living with the failure. Number 2, when you first try your hand at public speaking, choose a subject you know best because that gives you a firm footing to stand on. For me, that footing, of course, was real estate. Number 3, you can't get good at something you don't practice. You've got to put in the time. I practice by volunteering to teach a course. You can practice in front of your work peers or in front of friends or family. It makes very little difference, but you need to find some way to practice a lot in front of somebody to get over your fear. One more thing. It's okay to tell your audience you're scared, as almost everybody is afraid of public speaking and they'll identify with you. It makes your audience root for you immediately and get on your side, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable with the audience on your side. The minute I start speaking, I've gotten in the habit of looking for someone who looks friendly and who's smiling at me and focus on them as though they're the only person I'm speaking with. And if I find someone is actually sleeping while I'm speaking, I actually stop and ask someone to wake them up. It's usually just a drunk who's had a party night the night before. Once you get good at speaking in public, you get a big bag of gold in return. Public speaking is the single best way to take command of a room. Position yourself as an expert in your field and have lots of people clamoring to meet you and do business with you. It's a shortcut to growing your business fast, building credibility for your brand, and a surefire way to double your confidence all at the same time. This is Business Unusual with Barbara Corcoran. And now it's time to answer your questions on Business Unusual. Emily from Westerly, Rhode Island asks, I'm timid. I'm having a really hard time learning to sell the services of my business. I don't feel comfortable cold calling. How do I learn to sell and feel comfortable cold calling? Emily, you might not want to hear what I have to say, but I can tell you that you're not going to learn to be a salesperson. Salespeople by nature are never timid. It's the way you're born. Timid people can think very clearly, plan very well, and do a myriad of things that outgoing people make no time for. What you need to do is get yourself an outgoing person to couple up with, to make them your business partner, to get them out selling. Forget about it if you think that you're going to learn to sell. It just ain't going to happen. Sophie from Denton, Texas asks, what advice do you have for me? I have a great idea, but I don't have any money to invest. Sophie, I can tell you, if you have a great idea, that's worth a lot of money, and you could go out and find someone to fund it. When I was building my brokerage business around Manhattan, I had to locate the exact right property to house my business, and I had no knowledge of what was good, what was the right block, where I should invest my money. So I found a regular person that lived in that neighborhood who knew it inside and out, who didn't have money to invest, and I made them my 10% partner. Can I tell you today, their 10% ownership in all of those properties is worth a fortune, because what they had was knowledge, what I had was money, and anyone who's knowledgeable can always find the money. And that's all the questions we have time for today. If you have a question, tweet it at Barbara Corcoran, and I may just answer it on a future episode. You've been listening to Business Unusual with me, Barbara Corcoran. Come back next week to hear more steps and missteps I took on the path to success on Business Unusual. Business Unusual is part of the iHeartRadio Podcast Network. Come back next week and be sure to follow Business Unusual on iHeartRadio or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.